Today's video we'll be talking about the epic Warpath Rulebook. So this book and the token sheets that come with it came out in late September 2025. It might have come out a bit earlier or a bit later, but real world things and all that problems did happen. So that was the release date over here in UK, and yeah, it's overall a pretty well laid out rulebook. As I've said in the video for the 2-player starter set, it's really well done. The artwork's pretty good. It's got a few quibbles with it, which we'll go through as I go on, but you know, it's pretty good so far. So starting with, it goes through the play testers, thanking them a little bit. There's quite a few. I'm not going to go through them all, but there's a lot. Then goes through a contents page, a bit of a blurb, and a bit of welcome to Warpath. And then from page 4 to page 11, so 7 pages, it's getting started, what you need to know, how the unit profiles work, how line of sight works, measuring, command dice, targeting dice, stuff like that. I don't think it's, yeah, it doesn't say the commands on these pages, no. And it also gives you an example of an army composition, which, you know, as you do. Then it goes on to rounds and phases, starting on page 12, going to page yeah, so round page 13 to page 30. Is it 34 or 35? To 35. Starts off with the command phase, which is basically you roll your command dice to see how many commands you can do a turn, and then each unit has these tokens put on them, either an Overwatch, Advance or Sprint token. Unless they're in combat, command units always get an Overwatch and Sprint token, so they can effectively move really far and shoot, so they've got some mobility for command units, which is nice. You also roll for his initiative each turn, so it's not a case of first person will do each turn, it's a case of it might not happen. I like that. I like that. On page 15 it has the tactical orders, which I do have to say some people I've noticed have had a little bit of a confusion between tactical orders and the army ones. The army ones you need to be within radius of a commander. The tactical ones you don't. It's basically just do them when it says do them. That's it. The army specific ones, you do them when it says you do them, but you have to be in radius of a commander, and it costs so many command points. These you just spend the command points to do them when you do them. Once you've done all the applying of the command, the tokens, you then move on to the movement phase, starting on page 17. Shows you what movement does, how to sprint, how to get into buildings. Also shows how to get into charge range, because you do the charges and movement as well. And then you put a combat token on units, which is nice. It effectively means, right, you've done with that unit for that phase, you then put this token on for the combat phase, because it goes movement phase, Overwatch phase, then combat phase. So some people might get a bit worried that it's not the usual movement, shooting, assault. No, it's nothing like that at all. But once you read through this book, it becomes so clear and really interesting. I'd like to see more games, not necessarily at epic scale, but you know, 28mm games. I'd like to see more games adapt this sort of activation system, because this seems really good. It's not just you go, I go, because you activate a unit in the movement phase, then your opponent does. It's a case of everyone does one phase and then everyone does the next phase. It's beautiful in how it works in a way. Then we go on to Overwatch phase, which is essentially a personalised shooting phase. It mainly means if you have been charged, you get to shoot them first, which, why not? The thing about the Overwatch phase as well is that certain units can they actually shoot in combat? Oh, no, they can't. Okay. Yeah, it just basically outlines how shooting works as well, including blast weapons and like what happens when blast markers work, because usually blast units with blast weapons, you get them in units of 3, so you put the main blast template down, and then the other 2 blast templates go around it, unless you've got chain fire, I think it's called, where you can put them one template, next template, next template. You don't have to put it in a flower effect like you do with normal blast weapons, which is nice. It shows how they use the targeting dice, and in a way old 40k fans will like this, because it really does feel like old 3rd and 4th edition, and to an extent, yeah, 3rd, 4th and 5th edition 40k, which is really nice. I know some people didn't like it was so random, deep striking and whatnot, but I just think it was part of the fun, and this brings it back in a way, and it works. Also shows you that you can't you can't target units that are over your range and not in line of sight effectively. So models in the unit only die if you can actually reach them and you can actually see them. So models in the unit will just live if you can't reach or see them. It then, once you've done that, goes on to the combat phase, in which you do shooting if a unit just moved, or shooting if a unit was in Overwatch but then didn't shoot, or close combat if a unit charged. Also has a nice thing for close combat where if they're not charged by a vehicle, walk, roll, that sort of thing, vehicle can actually leave at the end of the combat, which is nice, because I mean, it makes sense. They're much bigger than infantry. They can just move out of the way. It's then got ongoing ping. And another thing, before I forget, for close combat is, once combat's done, if no models are actually in base contact, then the winner does not have to keep going in combat. It can just move on to something else if it wants to, which, you know, it's nice it's got that option. On page 34 it then goes on to pinning, and the end phase just like tidy up and stuff like that. On page 36, 37 it goes over terrain, and it shows the height for terrain, so it's not a case of you and your opponent saying, what shall we have this height of a thing at? Shall we have it at height 3? Shall we have it at height 6? No, it just says. Easy enough. Also says what the terrain does. One thing that's, it's just a personal thing, I think most people not bother, is that it lists on how terrain affects movement in a little bit different to the terrain type and height on the opposite page. It's just a little thing, but it's like, why is this but nah, it is a personal thing, I know. Then it goes on to buildings on page 38 to 40. It's really nicely set out. It basically says, if you've seen my video on the Warpath terrain, that's basically how it works. Each square, well, normal square, is a 2" by 2" square, and the smaller ones are a 2" by 1". And then the long rectangular one is 2" by 4", and then the big one is 4" by 4". Easy. It's basically, if you each 2-inch square, you can put 3 bases in it. I say bases, 3 models. It's the same thing. They call it bases in the rule book because the little teeny tiny models go on a base, but I sometimes say models because also shows you how blast templates work. It's effectively, if the blast template is anywhere over a building, then everything inside it gets hit. One thing that I really like is certain weapons, if they've got the destroy rule, can actually destroy a building. What that means is any unit inside a building is gone. No armor rolls, no survive / armor saves, nothing. It's just basically they're gone. They are crushed by rubble, concrete, steel beams, whatever. It's just, nah, you're gone. Which I think is really nice. One thing that's a little bit confusing to me on page 40, and I'll just bring it up here, this bottom picture, if you can see it here. If you notice on the top one, it splits this building into effectively 6 sections, where this middle lower section isn't really, you know, sufficient enough to put models in it, whereas the other bits are. So it's a 5 wide building effectively, so you can put 15 models in it effectively, which that's a pretty nice building. On the bottom, it like cuts it in half, which I'm assuming. I think it's a bit weird. I'm assuming it's splitting. I think it's split in half, so that you can show if you've got multiple units. So this part of the building is dedicated to this unit. This part of the building is dedicated to this unit. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's how it works. On page 41 to 43, it goes on to transport. One thing that's interesting is if you're in the transport and the transport is destroyed, the models inside it can either bail out, and that includes all the other models that are in the rest of the transports, or they can take survive rolls to not die. Yeah, it's transport's mainly there just because they're fast, but they can be quite risky, as I'll go on to in a little bit. On page 44 and 45, it goes on to flyers. Flyers the only unit that's got a front arc and a rear arc, and weapons can only shoot from the front arc. I hope that doesn't mean that certain weapons can't fire. I don't think it does, but it's just something to note that flyers can't fire at the rear. I suppose it just means you measure and use line of sight from the front of the vehicle. It goes on to keywords next, which are like the universal special rules, which you know, all well and good and whatnot. Some are taken from other Mantic games, and some of them work a little bit different. Like vicious is not to reroll once to wound. No, vicious is you get exploding dice to wound. Which, that's a new one. You don't get exploding dice for all weapons, but you get it for a lot of weapons, and they haven't got it for firefight, but would it be a good idea for firefight? One rule on page 46, APC rule, I honestly think, and I've only played 2 games, but I honestly think the APC rule is going to be a rule that people are going to forget. Not because they don't want to use it, it's just because with everything else going off in the game, it's just something you're not going to remember. The only people that's going to remember are tournament players, I think. Most players, I don't think, are going to remember it at all. How it works is APCs of unit strength 0, which APCs do anyway. You look on the unit profiles. They cannot effectively charge enemies, so they can't assault. They can be assaulted and they can attack back. They just can't do assaults, which, alright, okay. Their infantry and heavy infantry get +1 hit and +1 AP against them in close combat, which, like I say, makes transport in a fair few cases, unless they're like the really big ones or some of the support ones, a bit of a risk, honestly. But if you know what you're doing with them, they can be quite useful. A lot of the transports are just horrendously fast, just zipping across the board like no one's business. And considering how some of the units work, yeesh. That's from page 48 to 50 for the keywords. On page 51 to 59 is scenarios, and something for the rules committee, game designers and higher ups, and anyone that actually work at Mantic who wants to listen to this. Can we have more game scenarios made like this? Quite frankly, this is the best bit of the rule book. There are no scenarios. How it works is you start by rolling deployment zone for you and your opponent. So it's 1d8 and then there's 4 types. Then you roll to see objectives. You've got static objectives, which are always on, and dynamic objectives, which go on and off each turn, depending on if you're near them or not. It's a d8 roll, and there's 4 different types of where you put them and the like. You then go roll for scoring. There's roll a d8, and there's 4 different types. Are you getting the pattern here yet? Then goes on to reserves. The roll a d8, and there's 4 different types. The only thing that's a little bit confusing is arriving from reserve, but I've not actually done that. It's the only bit that looks weird because there's 6 different examples it shows. It's just a little bit weird, but once I've played it a few times, I think it'll become second nature. Most things in the book are pretty well laid out. It just, on the face of it, looks, but when you read it, it's like, ooh. On page 59, it goes on to Fog of War. So if you don't think all of that is enough for a scenario creator, which it's the nearest damn it as you're going to get, you can add Fog of War as well. Which effectively means you only flip and reveal tokens as they activate units or as an Overwatch charge reaction. It then goes on to, from page 51 to 128, so about 67 pages, army lists. So from page 61 to 64, it's army construction, how you create an army. And in Warpath, you are creating multiple armies in one army. Each army you're creating in your army is called a company. So each company, you have to have 1 HQ and 2 troops. And you can have 2 more troops, and for each troop you can have a specialist, and you can only have up to 4 specialists. And for each 2 mix of troop and specialist, so you could use it for a specialist and a troop or both troops, you get a support, and you can only have up to 4 support. And you can have up to 1 super heavy, which counts as one of your support. Now, some super heavies are also HQ, so they take up your HQ and your support slot, a support slot. You can have any number of transports for each unit that's not a walker vehicle, super heavy, or bike unit type. And it's best if you do that per unit if you want, or just tack them on at the end. It says how command transports work. So if a unit's in a transport, then the command radius is from the transport. Then goes on to battlefield stratagems. So don't go. I know you. When you hear the word stratagems, you're gonna turn this video off. No, it's not like that other game where you've got tons of stratagems. No, you've technically got 5. 2 of them have got 3 3 in each, but you pay extra to spend on them, chances are you will not buy that many because you'll just have so many units. I think you'll only probably take 2 at most, honestly, because of how many points they cost. You can only take each stratagem once, and once you've used it, it's effectively gone for the most part. Unless it just applies all the time, but for most of them it's a one-off sort of thing. So you don't have to take them actually, but they will give you a bit of a advantage, obviously, and they are for everyone. There's no army specific ones. There might be in the future, but Mantic don't do that. I think enough people have had enough of army specific stratagems to last a lifetime. Then it goes into the army list proper, starting on page 66 with the Astarians, and then that goes on to page 72. All armies are between 6 and 9 pages long, depending on what units they've got and so on and so forth. The layout, you've got the army special rule, which all factions have 1. You've got the nerve value, which that's universal for that faction. So you're not looking to see what nerve does that unit have. You just look on the army nerve, that's it. It's got the strategic orders for the faction. Each faction's got 3, and they are the ones where you need to be in command radius to use them, for the most part. Certain ones don't. And then it goes on to units. We've got troops, then it goes specialists, then goes support, then transport, then HQ, then super heavy. I would have put transport before support if it was me, but that's just a minor niggle that doesn't really matter too much. Each faction's got 2 super heavies, by the by. Each faction's got at least 1 transport and at least 2 HQ. Some factions have got more, but you know, it's all well laid out and pretty well done, actually. Then goes on to background. Even though at the start of each army it does have a little bit of background, so it's got like a page or 2 pages of fluff on the army, and then like I say, the background is from page 131 to page 164, so quite a few pages of background in there. And I just show one of the artwork bits again if I can find it. Yeah, this is a really good one. So as you can see here, I'll just see if I can make it so not covering any of it. So them things down there are plague colossals, and you can see like enforcers are them ones that you can see in the corners are in dropships and whatnot, just shooting down on them. And you can see more gunships and dropships up there, and you can see a massive firefight at the bottom, which I'll say this, a lot of the artwork is taken from art they've used in other books before, like Dead Zone and Firefight, but a lot of the new artwork is so good. I've held that the King's War art book from the beginning of 3rd edition onwards is Mantic's best art. The stuff in the Warpath Rulebook, the new stuff, I would say is as close as Mantic have gotten to being as good sci-fi wise as they've got it as good for Kings of War. And honestly, I'd like to see just a whole background book just of sci-fi artwork just using the Warpath style, because it is really good. It's really good. I mean, yeah, this is the one I was actually looking for. So you can see Vermin versus GCPS. I don't think I've got that right there. And you can see a big mech, which is one of the GCPS's and Plague Super Heavy. And you can see these big tunneling fortress behemoths. I can't remember what they're called, but it's basically like a slow moving fortress thing on this side for the Vermin, and some other fight going across. It's fantastic, fantastic. It then on page 166 to 168 goes over quick reference stuff, which I don't think you see much of that in Mantic's rule books. Not that I can remember. I might be wrong on that, but it doesn't feel like it. So I think this is really well done. I'd still like to see an index page, to be honest, and I think all rule books should have an index page, but I know that's just me. But quick reference is really well done as well. So there you have it. The rule book has got a few niggles in it, a few criticisms, but overall it is really well done. You get the token sheets on here on the back as well. I believe it's 30 quid to get this, and the size of it and what you get in it is really well done. The factions you get, how many factions are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 factions, so there's plenty to go in there. I don't think there should be all the factions that are in the Dead Zone to be put into Warpath. There just isn't enough, let's be honest. But yeah, it's a really good game, and although I've only played 2 games and still working out some of the kinks of it, I think it's a really good game. And honestly, I think if you're looking for a easy to get into and really hard to master epic scale game, you can't go wrong with this. So until next time, thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.